Welcome to the Rough Characters Podcast. I am your host, Philip Overby,
I'm John Palladino.
and this is our debut. If you're listening on audio only, um, then you don't see anything, but this is our debut video of both of us talking together. So, this is something we're going to try for YouTube and just see how it goes. You haven't seen the behind the scenes, but so far not going well. So we'll see how this works out. But I figure for our video debut, we would talk about something that's pretty big, and that's the Last of Us TV show, which just finished as of this recording a few days ago. So both of us have a lot of thoughts about it. So let's get right into it and talk about the Last of Us TV show. So first of all, John, what was your overall feeling about the adaptation of The
Well,
Last of Us?
actually, before we talk about the show real quick, can we just give our opinions on the game? Because we've both played the game, right? Like you beat the game too, right?
Yes, I've only played the first one though, so I have no idea about anything in the second
Okay.
one, and I don't want any spoilers about the second one.
Okay, I'm not going to spoil the second one for you other than to say that I hated it, but that's not a spoiler. So that probably means that you're going to love it.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, for me, the first game was a 10 out of 10 game. It was one of my favorite games I've ever played. What about for you?
Yeah, along the same line, it was one of the first experiences I had with a game where it was like um where I actually felt something
Oh my god, I know the
like it made it feel like it was okay. Games can be art feeling. Usually with games, I would play them and they were fun or whatever, and but the first Last of Us game I played, it left a lasting impression on me, which is very hard to do for me if you know me. Uh, it's hard to impress me, I guess. So, but yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite PS3 games, I guess, when it originally came out.
uh yes, I think it was a PlayStation 3 game. Uh
Yeah, so
that's right, I think, right? Yeah.
huge fan of the game. So I was looking forward to the show. As always, with any show, you're kind of like, especially video game adaptation. It's always,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So my immediate uh response to knowing that they were making a adaptation of it was pretty apprehensive. And because the game was such a monumental, like 10 out of 10 game for me, I think I'm a bit more harsh on the TV show, perhaps, than a lot of people might be. But I still think it might be one of the best video game adaptations I've seen. And I say that as someone who's quite critical of the show.
yeah. I can't honestly think of any video game adaptation that right offhand I can come up with that it was as good as this. Um, but we had talked about HBO has a good track record for the most part. There's hits and misses here and there.
In the same show sometimes.
Sometimes huge misses. Um,
Yep.
so this show, when it was good, it was incredible.
Oh, yeah, I know. It really was.
But there were moments that I was kind of like, okay. I never
Yeah.
outright hated an episode, but there were episodes I liked way more than others.
Yeah, so I'll just spoil my kind of rating for the show real quick. And I and this might just be kind of that I'm more critical of this show because of how much I liked the game. I think that my rating for this show is entirely dependent on my enjoyment of the game. If I was to grade this show based on other shows, I would do a whole different system, I think. But for me, it's like a 6 out of 10 show. I know that's kind of a hot take, but like I thought it was a solid show, that like adaptation. But I was really disappointed by some of the stuff in it. Again, if we're looking at it from like a show perspective and not comparing it to the game, I think it's probably better than a 6. But just the big emotional like moments in the game, none of them really hit for me in the show in the same way, except maybe in the first episode. I think that was like, I thought that was a really good episode. But like towards the end, especially, a lot of things either felt like rushed or kind of neglected, and in a way that kind of really tapered off my like rating for the show, my enjoyment. I just thought it was kind of spoiled.
Um, I guess for me, it was so long ago I played the game, and I really didn't look back and think about it that much. There were certain things. There were certain things I went, oh, I remember that, or but there's certain things like when the Bill and Frank stuff came up on the show. Like I vaguely remember Bill, but I didn't remember anything about Bill and Frank's relationship or anything. And I didn't really remember anything about Riley. I guess Riley was a DLC, maybe. Maybe she wasn't in the
Yeah,
actual.
so I did a little bit of research on this stuff because again, I was like kind of foggy like you were. But so Frank was never in the game. I think you might have been able to see his dead body at some point, and there
Mm,
was like a suicide note or something, and, and it might not even have been a suicide note. I don't remember the exact details. Uh, but in the game, as far as I'm aware, it wasn't actually confirmed that they were in a relationship. I think it was like hinted at. As for Riley, yeah, that was 100% just like DLC. I
mm.
think almost all of episode 7 was just like straight from that DLC, I think.
Yeah, so there were certain parts that I was reading an article the other day about something they call transmedia, which I thought was interesting, where something like a comic book, for example, the Avengers, becomes transmedia. So it becomes like you have the original story, and then you can go so many different directions and using different media, games, movies, TV shows, and expand upon everything. And I think the Bill and Frank episode was an example of transmedia where it was vaguely hinted at in the game, but that episode allowed to interpret it however they wanted and kind of take it in a different direction, or maybe kind of like cutting room floor stuff, maybe like ideas they had for the video game but just didn't make it into the game because of time constraints or whatever. But some of the stuff that was expansive, like expanded on the game or added from the game, I thought was some of the better stuff. um the stuff that was just straight adaptation, for example, we kind of vaguely talked about this off podcast, but the final episode I felt like was almost like a direct beat for beat. I mean, there was a little bit difference, but almost the same as the end of the game. So for me, I was almost expecting them to twist it or something, but I guess the fact that the game ending was such a huge controversial thing when it released, that I think I read that the creators of the show were like, the ending of the game is the whole reason we made the show. So I guess it kind of makes sense they wouldn't change it. Um, but it's cool that a whole new group of people that didn't play the game can discuss, the of course we're going to go into spoilers here, but discuss like what would you do in that situation? Save the person you care about, the only person you care about, basically, that's alive, or save the world, maybe. So it's that interesting moral conundrum um, that I think is good for discussion because after you watch the show and you're just like, that's fine, it's kind of loses its meaning. But like the end of the game and the end of the show opens up like, wow, did Joel just went full psychopath and didn't give a shit, or he was just fed up and broke or whatever, uh, and didn't want to lose the one person he cared about again. So
Yeah, I actually have a lot of issues with the last episode, and I don't know if you remember the last episode exactly, but everything in the beginning of the episode till right when the flashbang or whatever was thrown at them,
mm,
I thought was great. Everything after the flashbang went off and they got captured by like the Fireflies and brought into the hospital and then through to the end of the show, I hated.
mm,
And the reason why I hated it was because felt so rushed, and B, I didn't think that their relationship had earned that level of emotion yet that the game had. And then C, the kind of part of the rushed part, I guess, was there's that part where Joel wakes up and it's like a minute and a half conversation maybe with Marlene. And to me, it seemed so, I don't know, rushed, odd, uh, just not enough information for Joel to react in the way that he did, I thought.
so
I know that it's implying that she's going to die, but there's no like confirmation. There's no questioning. It was just like, okay, so it's in her brain, but like it just to me it felt like just a weird leap for everything that happened there. If I was Joel, I'd be asking a lot more pointed and specific questions, I think. Which he didn't do. And I don't know if that happened in the game or not. It's been so long since I played it, but I remember in the game feeling like there was like a 100% like I knew that she was going to die, and like I felt 150% like justified as Joel. Like you can't do this to her without asking. But then in the show, I just felt like a lot of that wasn't there. It didn't feel the same. I don't. It felt a lot vaguer and a lot more like open to interpretation. Maybe and maybe that was just me. I've heard other people say it was great, but I just didn't have that same like, oh my god, you have to like save her before they operate on her kind of like feeling, and then that same like relief, I suppose, when he gets there, and that same justification when he like shoots the doctor, and also outside when he kills Marlene. I don't know, just none of it had that same like emotional weight to it that I felt it did in the game.
yeah, it was a little the same. I like that. I like the last episode fine, like in a vacuum, I guess. Like
Yeah.
if I didn't play the game or didn't know anything and I watched that episode, I would have been like, "Oh shit, that's crazy." And the fact that um they pretty much didn't go off path from the game for the ending. I mean, even like I think the very final thing, like where Ellie's like, "Are you swear you're telling the truth?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And she's like, "Okay." I think that's exactly the same as the end of the
Yeah.
game. And I remember after watching that on the game, I was like, "That's it! Oh my god!" And I was so pumped for like what was next. But I never played the second game just because again, we're not going to get into that because I guess that's going to be season two. And I want to experience season two without playing the game and just see if I feel differently or something, or like maybe,
Yeah.
maybe the source material resonates with me more without having played the game. I don't know.
Now, I've heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I've heard that they're going to be breaking up the second game into multiple seasons, which is odd to me.
Mm,
But so I mean, probably what happened was HBO was like, "Oh my God, look how much money we just made. We
yeah,
need to
yeah.
stretch this out." So now we're probably going to get 2 seasons of like 9 episodes, which I think is now maybe too much. I think that this season needed to be 10 to 12 episodes. I would have gone with 12, I think. Um, but to have 2 seasons in the next game, like I just, now, I'll admit, I think there's more there, but 2 seasons, and that's not even confirmed. They've just said multiple seasons, I think.
Mm.
So theoretically, I maybe they expand it more. I don't know. I don't think it could be more than 2 seasons. I think that might almost be impossible. But I don't know. So I'm wondering if we're gonna get like a lot more filler. I'm still gonna watch it. So I'm probably gonna be like hate watching season 2. We'll see. Maybe I'll like it. It's hard to say. It's been a long time since I played that game as well. I don't know, but
Um,
I just
well,
hope it's better than the game, or at least I like it more than the game.
I think it's one of those things where, anytime something like HBO gets a winning property, they're gonna milk it or whatever, of course, because people want
Right.
more
Yeah.
more of it. So, I mean, there's even the possibility they could do Last of Us stuff that's not even associated with LE.
I would love that, but they did
Um,
announce before that they were only planning on adapting the games. But
oh, okay.
I would love extra stuff that had nothing to do with like Joel and Ellie, but was set in the same like world. I just think that it's a world that's really ripe for like extra stuff. And we've kind of seen that in the show where they did those little like, well, you had episode 3, of course, but then you
Mm,
also had like those other smaller interludes, like that would kind of show other people's backgrounds and their stories. Like I think Henry and Sam had one, um,
yeah.
and those were I actually really liked those, and it kind of gave you a hint at like what a spin-off show maybe could be like in the world, I guess. And I would personally be really into seeing more of that world.
Yeah, well, I read something that Naughty Dog is talking about their next project, and they're really hush hush about it. You would think they would capitalize on this with Last of Us 3, Part 3.
Right.
But who knows? I think some of the reasons I really liked the show was the expanding parts of it, and I would say probably my favorite of the episodes was either episode 1 or episode 3. Those are the two strongest ones, I felt like, for me anyway. Because episode 1 was a really good episode 1, but
Yeah,
it
it
was a
was.
little bit like like the game. But I did like how, I don't remember if this was in the game or not, but it almost makes you feel like Sarah is the main character. And I think you play as Sarah
Yeah,
a little bit at the
I
beginning.
think. Yeah, I think you do play as Sarah. Man, it's been so long I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure you do play as Sarah up until uh you leave the house, and then I can't remember if it's a cinematic or if you play as Joel driving the car. But
Mm,
as soon as like the car stopped, actually that whole thing might be a cinematic. Now that I'm
mm.
thinking about it, so I think you play as Sarah until you get into the car because I remember the nighttime house exploration where you're like, what's going on? And so I do remember that. But I will say I loved the expansion of the beginning of the show. It gave you kind of like more time with Sarah. It gave you kind of more information about like the world before what happened and what was happening with Joel and Sarah, and it showed the neighbors, which was kind of interesting. And I just kind of liked the slower start, I guess you could say, because the game I think was a lot faster of a start anyway.
Yeah, I liked also I think we talked about this a little bit just in from chatting about how we both really liked the stuff, the scientific panel kind of stuff,
Oh yes, that open was so good.
and then the Indonesian uh scientists.
Yep, that was also very interesting too.
I like that kind of stuff because it was a way to present the realism of this disease. It wasn't like, oh, it's
Right,
usually
another zombie.
usually these kind of zombie shows, of course, they don't never refer to them as zombies, but um, they have people kind of like the people on the ground figuring out it's like a mystery and like how did this happen and then they find out, but like it was like hard, like almost hard science stuff, like um oh, fungus can do this and blah 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 to insects, and then like, well, what, well, that couldn't happen to humans, right? And I'm like, it could. I'm like, really? Shit. So yeah, I really liked that stuff. It didn't, it wasn't dry or anything, because like you would think something like that would feel kind of dry, or but it was really gave like a nice touch to the world building. um some of the stuff I guess I didn't like as much. And this is something some other people have talked about, was the um I guess I felt like there were like many villains throughout the show, but
Yeah.
you never really got enough time with them to like really like, especially David, the preacher. He was just one episode, and it's
The whole
like,
section was so rushed though.
yeah, I felt like that could have been two episodes with,
Uh-huh. Yep, that was another criticism of mine was that whole section was super rushed and just didn't feel anything for Ellie or Joel the entire time, personally. And I thought it was just like in the game, it was such. It might have been even more intense than the end of the game. That whole part was crazy because you're like walking around as an injured Joel and trying to like save her. And I, I don't know, the show just didn't land for me as well. Like there's that part where she's stabbing him like over and over and over and over again, and then she gets up and leaves by herself, and then she walks outside and Joel's there, and it wasn't that great. In the game, you walk in on her doing that and you pull her away from that, and then it just, I don't know, it just felt so much more like him taking care of her, I guess. Like,
mm,
so what they did in the show that I don't think they did in the game was um I think they I think the whole problem that I have is maybe the writing with Ellie. Um in the game, Ellie is 50% like the cute, innocent, like just young girl that she is. And then she has 50% of like the strong, sarcastic, like you can't tell me what to do type girl, right?
yeah.
Like the kind of growing teenager part, I think, because she's young, so she has that like I'm getting my own independence, but I'm still like a young kid. But in the show, and this is just my interpretation, but when I was watching the show, I felt like we didn't ever get the first 50%. We never got like the childish Ellie. We didn't really get the innocence, there's a lot of cute moments in the game, I think, that she had that were kind of funny and stuff, but we didn't really get that. We got some of the funny, sarcastic stuff, and she really reminded me of like I can't remember the character's name, but before The Last of Us, Bella Ramsey, I think is her name.
Mm.
She played in that Game of Thrones episode or two
Yeah, she was.
as that strong like kid leader, and she was kind of like strong and snarky and stuff. And to me, it just felt like that character as Bella, as not Bella, as Ellie. I just didn't feel like we got gentler side of Ellie, I guess might be the right way of saying that. Just it just felt like they were trying to make her too sarcastic and too like, I can handle this, but that's like not how it was in the game. I'm not sure if I explained that very well, but
Well, I think there's elements of that, like that she was, she's basically born into a world that was completely annihilated.
right.
But she still has these moments of like, oh, Mortal Kombat, I know this game, and like she gets excited about stuff a kid would get excited about, or like, the giraffe appears. Oh my god, the giraffe. And uh there's elements of that, and then the kind of stupidity of the pun book where she's always telling the puns.
And
um
they used the shit out of that
yeah,
book.
so I think there's some elements of that, but I can see what you're saying, that it seems like they went further on the just the
Yeah,
hard ass teenager kind of vibe.
yeah.
um I think like when Joel is gonna have Tommy take uh Ellie instead of him, there's that element of, you know, kind of childishness where she's like, no, I don't want to go with Tommy. I want to go with you,
Yeah,
Joel.
that's true.
There's that kind of
Uh,
element. And then I thought it was funny. I don't know if it was jarring for other people, but just like Joel just shows up that episode and he's like, yeah, I just wanted to see you off and give you a choice. And she's like, okay, I choose you.
uh,
Let's go.
yeah,
And
it's
I
so
was like,
weird.
well,
But
what? Okay.
it was like, again, that was like another moment that should have been like good and emotional, but just wasn't. And so, okay, let me first of all, let me say that my favorite episode in the season was number 3, but with a big caveat, which I want to get into in a minute. But man, that show was amazing. The episode was so good when you watched it. It was fantastic. I'll tell you why it's also was not a great episode. So it's my favorite episode. Loved it. But because the series was so short, we have 9 episodes. Really, you have 8 episodes, 7 episodes, because episode 7 was also its own story that had nothing to do with Joel and Ellie. So you have 7 episodes. Cut that down to 6 because the premiere, I don't think Ellie was in the premiere, and if she was not with Joel. So 5 episodes to develop their relationship. Really 4, because the last episode doesn't really count for developing the relationship. It's the end of the show. So now you're down to 4 episodes to get to know these characters. And what we focused on, in my opinion, didn't work. It didn't build the relationship up enough. So I think that episodes 3 and 7 really took away from the time that we could have had with them. And my biggest problem is that I think they did an excellent job showing why Joel didn't really like her and why she was like not really super happy about being with Joel, right? The whole Tess thing, which I didn't like how Tess died. I didn't like how fast that was. I thought they kind of didn't do that as good as they could have. But after Tess died, you kind of get that resentment between them. It makes sense. But I don't think there was enough time between that moment and the moment where Joel decides, like, okay, this is like almost like my new kid, so now I'm going to take care of her. So we got some of that, a little bit, kind of, not really, of them like traveling and doing a little bit of stuff. But I think this is why the show didn't land for me. So in the game, when you're traveling with Joel and Ellie, there's several things that you're doing the entire game. The first is that you're going through these like battles, and you're like crouching and sneaking around and helping each other. And then there's the whole other aspect, which they did once in the show, which was Joel used Ellie basically to get in somewhere. So he had to lift her up to get the ladder. And the whole game is littered with moments like that where you're constantly like helping each other out. So one or the two of you have to like do something to help the other one. You
Mm.
just form this kind of bond through that. Same with the fighting, you guys are like crouching together and it's like scary, but you're like there together. And at some point in the video game, Ellie also like gets a gun and starts helping you. I think, right? Doesn't I think so. It's been so long. So, but in the show, that doesn't. She gets the gun, but there's not really that same partnership. You don't see them helping each other out. You don't see them like going through these fights that because there wasn't really any fights. There was a couple, but not in the same way that the game did it. I don't feel like the the best fight they had that's like reminiscent of the game was when Tess was still there, I think, and they had like the clickers in the
Oh, yeah.
was it a museum or whatever, and they were like crouched down, and it really felt like The Last of Us, the like battle almost. So my proposal to fixing this like gap between Joel really thinking of Ellie as like a suitcase and then Joel thinking of Ellie as like a friend or a daughter or whatever, the person he needs to take care of, is I think that we just if we had some moments in between where maybe they were traveling and they were out of food and they had to like go get some food, and like during this like scavenging run, maybe they had to help each other get into the building. Maybe they had to sneak around like some clickers. Maybe some thugs or something ambushed them. In any case, and then they helped each other. Now, they did that a couple times in like kind of weird ways. I think that there was that moment where Ellie had to come out and shoot the guy that was like on top of Joel or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know what it was about that scene. It just didn't feel right to me. It was like she did it, and then they like I don't know, never. They might have addressed it. I don't really remember, but I just remember that moment feeling not super great when in the games it would have like felt like, oh my god, I love this kid. She just saved my life. I don't. There was just something in between those two phases of the relationship that like was missing for me.
I think maybe the issue is, in the game, you're more or less controlling Joel through the whole game. So you're kind of seeing the game through Joel's eyes specifically. Whereas in the show, you're kind of seeing a little bit of everyone's point of view in a way, I guess. So like,
That's
um,
true.
so I think you don't get as much focus on that element of like connection. Where in the game, if you save Ellie or if Ellie saves you, or if you work together to do something, it's like the AI in the game is is actually helpful AI because there's lots of games where the AI is like, "What are you doing, you stupid ass?" So I think that builds that more. Whereas in this show, you basically have two main characters, Ellie and Joel, and you get kind of equal time with both of them. Um, and you get Joel's perspective and Ellie's perspective. So I think one way they kind of did that was when Joel gets injured and Ellie's kind of like going out to get them food and like getting the antibiotics and that kind of thing. That was kind of showing her taking care of Joel, whereas he's been kind of protecting her most of the way. um
I have to say that part of that episode I actually really liked.
yeah.
And then
um
everything after that part of that episode I really didn't like.
I think what I would have liked more is, you basically have, the clickers or the whatever. That's kind of the overwhelming force that's everywhere, kind
not
of thing.
not in the show.
Yeah, in the game, it's tension is, it's either Raiders are going to show up or the
All
Clickers.
right.
Um, in the show, the Clickers never feel scary to me. That like, especially that one scene, I thought it looked like Lord of the Rings or something, where the Clickers all come out of the ground,
Oh, when they were outside.
and then
Yeah.
they got
And
the big bloater or whatever.
yeah.
Um, that was a little like I wanted to see what that creature was going to look like, but I think some people had kind of said it seemed a bit too much like Lord of the Rings troll or something. Um,
yeah, I don't know. I
like I remember when I
thought
first
it
saw
looked
one of
weird.
those in the game, I was like,
Yeah.
shit.
Yes.
Because you'd only seen clickers up until then. And then when you
Yep.
actually, I think you're in a base,
Sewer.
yeah, sewer,
Yeah.
and it shows up and you're like, ah.
Fuck. And there's, if I recall, there's nowhere to really go. You're stuck in this room fighting it. It was a terrible moment.
So I think the claustrophobia of the game
Yeah.
uh, is utilized here and there, but yeah, the clickers never feel like
But
a real
yeah,
threat, I think.
but this is the maddening part for me. This is like maybe the worst part of the show. It's well established in the lore, in both the game and in the show, how big of a threat the infected are. We know that from the very beginning when shit goes down and you escape, and it's in the game and it's in the show that way. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the game, I believe, was always very like the cities are a huge problem because that's where everyone died. That's where a lot of the infected are. That's where a lot of the supplies are. So if you go into the cities, that's when shit went down. And I remember that in the games, right? Every time you went in the cities, you're like, fuck,
Yeah.
this is gonna suck. Because I know there's infected and I know there's like the bad the bandits or whatever.
Mm.
This game or this show, how often are they marching through these empty cities and there's just nothing? It was crazy to me. I was like, where's the threat? It's just so weird. You had like in the first was it the first episode or the second episode? It was when Tess died and they were in the city and you could see like all the infected and it was like that's
Yeah, yeah.
how every city should be. But it was like only there. And then they went through all these other like places with nothing. And it was just weird to me because it was just felt empty, I guess. And after episode uh 3, no. Was it episode 4 or 5 maybe where the ground opened up like Lord of the Rings? Uh After that moment, did we ever see another infected in the show again? I don't think we did.
Let's see.
Um
Can't
no, it's
I can't recall.
yeah, it's episode 5 when that
Oh
happens.
well, the flashback with Riley and Ellie.
Ugh, I guess, but that wasn't really a threat. There was one of them.
Yeah.
Now, again, I didn't. I don't recall playing the DLC. I don't. But the funny thing is that when I was watching the episode, I felt like I played the DLC, but I really don't remember it. But I did look up. It was a screenshot comparison between the game and the show, and I looked this up because I was trying to remember if I played it or not. And when I saw the screenshot, I was like, I really don't think I've played this, even though I feel like I remember it. But it shows uh, Ellie and Riley, and they were in the mall. I think this is what it showed. Man, I've seen so much stuff I might be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure that there was like a lot more infected than just the one.
Mm.
And then in this episode, they had like just one, which again kind of really bothers me because like I get that they're kids, but they've been training at this what, like,
Fedra
military.
military thing.
Yeah, they can't handle one and they both get infected. What? That is so just crazy to me because I don't know. I mean, I guess the way they filmed that, it kind of made sense, I suppose, if you could forgive some of the kind of funny choices during the action, I guess. But uh I don't know. It just felt a little forced that they both got infected from one dude. And I don't know.
Well,
But that's also my least favorite episode of the season was episode 7, by the way.
yeah, that is. I don't know if it's my least favorite. The stuff in St. Louis, I didn't like as much for some reason.
What's that? The Henry and Sam stuff?
Yeah, I liked Henry and Sam, but I didn't like
Yes, they were
like
great.
like some people had criticized the villain. Um, um,
That whole group was pretty bad, I thought.
she was okay. I kind of got what they were going for. They were going for like normal person turned
Right,
reluctant,
like psychopathic evil.
yeah, reluctant leader on a revenge or something. Um, and I did like the stuff they did with like they established that her brother was like a good guy and like would have forgiven Henry and like this kind of stuff, whereas she can't do that. Um, but I don't know, I just didn't like that part of the story as much. The stuff with Riley and Ellie, I liked a little more because it kind of it gave more depth to Ellie. I think. Um,
Okay, can I explain something real quick?
sure.
You're right that the other episodes are weaker episodes, but I have two reasons why I still say episode 7 is the worst. And one is the placement of the episode. Terrible, terrible. They You have Joel like get injured. You don't know if he's gonna live or die if you haven't played the game. Then you spend a whole episode on a flashback. I cannot stand that in any show ever. It
Mm,
just pisses me off. Even though I knew that the result of what happened, I
mm,
was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" We spent a whole hour with this flashback. It just irritated me just on principle alone. And then while I do agree that it's nice to learn the background to like what happened, like how Ellie got infected, did we need a whole hour to do this little mall escapade? Now, if this was a 10 out of 10 show that was like I loved every minute of it, this episode is fine. I really, if you're just looking at each individual episode, this might actually be one of the strongest episodes of the season. It's just that the placement of it and then the fact that we're taking it away from Joel and Ellie again for a whole
mm.
hour of I'm gonna say something and and I understand that might upset some people. Episode 3 and 7 added zero to the show aside from like cool extra information and background. But when those two episodes are an hour plus long and not adding anything to the main story, that's a really long time to be like not in the main story. And I really liked episode 3. It's my favorite episode, but I also feel like after finishing the season, what a waste because Bill never came back. Like I thought that Bill didn't actually die, and I thought he was going to show back up later in the show because it never actually showed that he died. And when he
Mm.
poured the crushed pills, I think it was, into the drink, it looked when I saw it, it looked like he only put it into one drink, and I really thought that because we didn't see their bodies, because Joel and Ellie didn't go in there and look. There was also, I think there was a moment where something happened in the house. Was it a door closing or something that kind of hinted that there was maybe someone still there or alive or something? I don't remember. And maybe it was just the way they filmed it. I can't recall. But I just remember coming out of that episode like, oh, Bill's coming back. Bill doesn't come back.
I never felt like that.
And so you always thought Bill was dead.
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't. And I really thought that he was coming back because in the game, Bill's an awesome character. I mean, he's a terrible person in the game, but he's a funny character. He has really good interactions with Joel and Ellie, and they didn't do that in the show. And that's too bad because I was really hoping they would. And I don't know, I just really liked Bill in the show a lot. I think standout character. I just can't believe that we wasted an hour on this dude's background who has zero impact in the show. Actually, zero impact in the show. He matters zero. They get a car key from him.
I disagree. Here is why I disagree. So, episode 3 and episode 7 both have significance for. It's not an obvious reason, but episode 3 is a Joel episode, and episode 7 is an Ellie episode. And I think episode 3 was to set up why Joel should care about continuing living. And I think that was the turning point for him, that episode. So we get all that stuff about Bill and Frank, but it's not ultimately about Bill and Frank completely. It's about what could be. It's about what could be in this world. So I look at it like on a bigger scale. I don't look at it from Bill and Frank that didn't have any impact on the story. I look at it from, this is what could be in this world. And Joel, the letter that he gets from Bill, like, take care of Tess, or, you only get one chance at this life and make it count, and care about, take care of the people, you're a protector, da 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 da. I think all of this ingrains itself into Joel from that point forward, up until the end, where he ultimately decides to set Ellie, rescue Ellie instead of saving the world, kind of thing. Whereas episode 7 is all about Ellie and why she doesn't get close to people, because the one person she cared about died and she had to kill them, and this is why she always has this distance a lot in the show. So I think from a thematic standpoint, it has significance. I think from a character standpoint, it doesn't. Like you said, like, it doesn't really affect the main story, but from thematically, or kind of connected to each character.
I have counterpoints as to why you're wrong.
not wrong.
So episode 3, you said that the letter had, like, that's the reason why episode 3 was so good, was the letter. And it showed what could be in the world. I don't think we needed an hour of Bill and Frank's relationship for a letter and to know that you could have a good relationship in the world.
Well, the letter wouldn't matter if we didn't see the Bill and Frank story,
I guess, but even so, just like, now the nice thing about the flashback was you did get to see Bill and Tess go there, so that part was, like, relevant, I thought, and I wouldn't have minded. Like, again, episode 3 is my favorite episode, so it's hard to do this. But like, it just didn't matter, like, to anything, I didn't think, because sure, there was stuff that affected Joel in the episode. I just don't think we needed a whole episode devoted to these two characters who did not affect anything. They Joel could have walked into any house at any moment, found the supplies they needed, found a letter to some random person that said the same thing, and had the same realization. Now, I understand that wouldn't have had the same impact, but I'm just saying that like it was a lot for what we needed for Joel. And now for episode 7, again, I actually agree more with your points on episode 7, but it's immediately nullified by the flashback in episode 9, I think, when you see her mom die, and then you see that she's like pulled into this like federal thing. And it's like, okay, obviously her whole life has been shit, and like that's why she's not close to people. And so yeah, the Riley thing does add on to that. But again, did we need a whole hour for that? Now, episode 3 and 7 are both fantastic standalone episodes, and if my grade of the show was like a 10 out of 10 after watching the whole thing, completely fine with both of them. But since I felt like the show suffered so much, I wonder if it's because they focus so much on these other aspects, like just amazing storytelling in 3 and 7. I don't think anyone can deny that unless you're like one of those crazy religious zealots who's really against the LGBT stuff in the shows, which I don't know if you knew this, but episode 3 got like, I'm not a big like believer of review bombing. I think a lot of times that they use that word, it's just people were, not happy with it. But in this case, I think I fully believe it. It was all because it was about a gay relationship. And because you can't watch that episode and think this sucked, right? Like even someone that I'm trying to tell you why episode 3 was terrible, even though it's my favorite episode. like, it was just such a good storytelling. And so, yeah, it was review bombed to, I don't know what the score was, but I just know that they got like a ton of backlash for that episode, which is too bad because it was a really good episode. But honestly, I think the only thing that they needed to do to fix the show for me was add 3 episodes. If you just had another episode with I forgot his name, but the preacher villain kind of area. So you put another episode there. Yeah. You put another episode in the finale. So that's those 2 big areas that I had major problems with. It would expand it and make it fleshed out. And then I think really if you just take another episode, maybe like half an episode devoted to more of their journey and trying to survive, and then maybe like another half of an episode in where like Tommy and that new girl that he's with, I forgot her name, but that settlement, I think maybe that would have given the show like enough time for me to like to show enough time for them to really develop the relationship between Joel and Ellie, just like that much more. And then also expand on like the 2 major plot points that are supposed to be really emotional that I didn't think resonated as much as they should have, which was when Joel is injured and then the hospital. But so that I'm not trying to say that those episodes are bad. I just think that in the context of the overall show, it brought it down because the season was too short. I think that's really the only problem with the show, is that they just needed more time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that a couple more episodes could have expanded some stuff more. But I stand by episode 3 and episode 7 were relevant. Even it doesn't seem relevant. Sure, they could have got to the same point, but I feel like if you took Joel and then you go from episode 2 to episode 4, there's really no moment there where we see a change in his stance about Ellie. From shut up, don't talk to me, you're bothering me, to suddenly, you know,
But did we get a change in episode 3? Really? Because I didn't really like the letter got to him. That was clear, but I don't think the episode 3 gave him that like
well,
change that much.
that's the seed.
Okay, fine.
So everything has a seed, right? You got to plant the seed, and then that grows into it builds up until the finale, basically. So that's where the seed is planted. That I don't care. I don't care about people because I lost Sarah and I lost Tess. And you learn in the final episode he was going to kill himself. But
Right.
he messed it up and didn't do it, and then there must have been a reason for that, and Ellie was that reason. So
Well, no, because that happened way before. So what Tess is probably the reason.
well,
Right.
I mean, he the reason he survived was ultimately to help Ellie, I think, like
Oh, yeah, yeah.
in
Okay.
the
Oh, yeah.
grand scheme of things. Um, so I think episode 3 is about purpose, and that's something that Joel is lacking. And then that seed is planted in episode 3. Oh, I can live in this world. I can live without a regular life almost. I mean, Bill and Frank shows how people can live a normal life given the circumstance. Not normal life, but
But Phil, we see this through the other compounds, like with
you
with
don't
Ellie flashback, she's living a normal life.
you don't really see a normal life like grow old together kind of thing.
I suppose that's,
So
I guess.
that's kind of like if you take just any situation and like just people living, that's one thing. But the fact that the Bill and Frank thing ends kind of on their terms in this violent, chaotic world, I think that was the seed that was planted in Joel. Like, oh, and then also when you find Tommy, Tommy's settlement, I forget what it's called, but that's
Yeah, I
another
don't remember.
thing where he's like, we don't have to do this. We can just stay here and just forget the saving the world thing. And Ellie's like, no,
Right.
we've come this far. Da 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 da.
It's in
So
Jackson, Wyoming, by the
yeah, yeah,
way. I just don't remember if it had a name for the settlement, but
yeah. It was like something Springs or something. I guess I could look it up if I wanted to.
yeah, I don't remember.
Silver Springs, maybe was that it?
Maybe I would look it up, but you know what would happen to my internet if I did today. So,
Well,
but
we've had some hiccups with the internet today, so apologize for anyone listening. Those small hiccups, but we've worked through it. Is it Silver Springs? No, that's a Fleetwood Mac song. What? I want to say it's called something Springs, though.
I don't remember, but it man, that was a place that I felt like we could have spent some more time in.
Yeah. So I think there's basically two types of storytelling that people do, right? There's just direct, here it is, here's the story, and then there's theme. And the theme is kind of the overarching, it's never explicitly told, but I guess the theme of The Last of Us is we can live in a world that's collapsed. We have to find purpose, or otherwise what's the point? And then ultimately the decision at the end is Joel decides, personal connection is more important than restoring humanity, because humanity fucking sucks anyway. what do you
Right.
what do you want to repair that for? uh it's kind of a bleak worldview, obviously, but um
in all fairness, the world is like already fucked. So I just don't know. Even if you got a cure, I just, man, it'd be really hard to like come back from that. I just, humanity's been like annihilated so much already, and now you have all these factions of like bandits and assholes, and
Well,
I think it'd be really hard to return to like normalcy.
it'd be interesting, like, the two different paths, right? Like if Ellie had been, they took her brain or whatever and found a cure, like what would happen then? We won't
Right.
know because that didn't happen. So,
Right.
um,
And I mean, honestly, I think that Joel was completely justified because they didn't even ask her. They were just going to kill her.
yeah, it's actually like it was an interesting thing I read when they did testing for maybe the game, and 100% of the people who were parents chose to save Ellie.
Oh,
I
that's
just
funny.
I just thought that was pretty interesting how not one parent said they would save the world over their child, and Ellie eventually becomes like a child for Joel. Um,
Right.
but
It's
yeah,
definitely a difficult thing because, like, in real life, like, I think I would really actually support the whole, like, well, Jace's just going to save the world, kill her. Like, let's save everyone. And that's kind of, a real truth right there. But in the game, it's like, also you could see why that would be good, but then it's just like, but I don't want to do that because you didn't even ask her, and that's terrible. And so it's like this thing, and I feel that way about real life too, right? Like if they just took you and put you under, and you didn't even know that you're gonna die, and they were just gonna kill you to save humanity. That also wouldn't sit well with me. But it's like it is a really hard moral question because like it is. Now, I'm gonna say this. This is gonna sound bad. It is just one person, right? Like when you're talking about the future of life and you're talking about billions of people, really, it's hard to justify like not doing that. But at the same time, it's like, you didn't even ask her. And that's just like, is there anything more egregious than like lying to someone, putting them under, and then like actually murdering them to save the world? I don't, that's like, that's a hard one.
well, I I know this is a completely different situation, but I've had kidney issues through my life, and I haven't had any recently, knock on wood. But um, when I got the surgery, I was going to get a surgery to remove it. So I guess they were going to cut into me, and you know, put something inside me to help me get the kidney stone out. But when I woke up, they had done a different procedure called a lithotripsy, which they shock your body or something. So they did a completely different procedure than the one I agreed to. So when I woke up, I was pissed because I was like, that's not what I agreed to do. And then it was like, well, we had to change it because we realized it was a different blah, 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 blah. But I mean, even in that small circumstance, they were messing with my body when I was asleep and they didn't do what I agreed to have them do. So I can totally understand that perspective. Like, save the world or not, like, tell me what you're going to do at least.
Right.
If you're gonna kill me, then tell me you're gonna kill me.
Yeah. And honestly, Ellie's the kind of person where if you had asked her, I think she'd be like, "Yeah, let's do this. Like, I want to save the world." Um,
Yeah, that's another thing that's kind of um she wasn't given a choice by Joel or the Fireflies.
right? Yeah, because the Fireflies were just gonna kill her, and Joel was like, "Nah, I'm gonna rescue you, and I'm gonna kill everyone to do
yeah.
it." And again, she doesn't get a choice of that either. And that's it's definitely kind of a big theme moving into the next season, I think, or game or whatever. I'm not, again, no spoilers, but that is obviously going to carry through.
Well, we've had a good discussion today. I think we've gone over an hour, so I think it's good time to wrap up. Um, if you've watched this video on YouTube, then please subscribe to their YouTube channel. And if you want more YouTube stuff, you can check out John's solo channel, Hot Takes Discussion, where he talks about different things. Sometimes our discussions may overlap a little bit, but in general, in this case, we're having like just more of a back and forth.
Yeah, I like to look at it like on my YouTube channel, Hot Takes Discussion. It's just me ranting about something that might be kind of like a hot take, right? And I did a video on The Last of Us review. It was just my immediate thoughts after finishing the show, but it was a lot less in depth. So
Yeah.
this is a lot more like in depth, a lot more conversational, a lot more debating, a lot more, like you said, back and forth. It's a lot more intriguing, I think, to have someone to like talk back and forth to either disagree or agree. So you're right, there is a little bit of overlap, but I think it's different forms of content still in a way that's like, I don't know, it's interesting because like I feel like when we talk about things, uh I have different thoughts sometimes, and then when I like talk by myself, I have different thoughts. So actually, you and I ranked the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
I actually did a stream on my YouTube channel where I ranked them, and honestly, I think the rankings on that channel are different than the ones that I gave you when we talked. I really I don't think it's the same ranking. I don't know. I didn't go back and compare, but I don't think it's the same. I was like, I don't think I ranked this as high as I did, and I don't. But so I'm inconsistent. That's what we've learned here. Before we totally wrap this up, though, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but if you were to give the TV show a rating, could you or would you? You don't have to. I'm just curious what it would be if you would.
If I would, I like to look at it through the lens of like, all-time great shows for me. So I have to start what a 10 out of 10 would be.
Right.
Season wise, like I think I said like House of the Dragon was a 10 out of 10, season one.
I think I said the same thing.
For me, this would be like a 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10, something like that. Because there were a few things that I didn't completely connect with, whereas I think House of the Dragon, I pretty much loved every episode, just slightly less than others, I guess. I can't
Yeah.
say I can't. There were some episodes I watched of this show and was like, that was good. I never hated an episode.
No, me neither.
There were things I questioned or nitpicks or whatever, but I mean, as an adaptation, it's one of the better, if not best, adaptations I've seen, and that's saying a lot for video games because
Oh,
most
definitely.
most would be like a 2 or a 1. So I would say, I think maybe if I rewatched it, my score would even be different. But
Yeah.
as of now, I would say like an 8, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm a little harsher than you. 6 out of 10. I said that at the start of this, but it's just 100%. The rating is just comparing how I felt about the emotional stuff in the show compared to the emotional stuff in the game. Like I felt those gut punches and that sadness and that like desire to do things in the game so much, but in the show, I gotta be honest. Aside from like Sarah dying, I didn't feel it when Tess died. I didn't feel it when anything happen. I mean, I felt it in episode 3, but again, that's kind of like a separate, because it wasn't in the game, so it's like a separate thing. uh, and on we didn't touch on it, but real quick, Tess's death in the show was the most like ridiculous thing. Couldn't I couldn't with that one.
Mm.
I thought it was kind of stupid. The whole like kiss with the like tendril, and she lets it happen. Who in their right mind is letting that happen? Like, I'm shooting him. She had I just, oh.
Well, I didn't really care about that much, but yeah, I think there were some choices here and there that I questioned, but I don't work for HBO, and I'm not getting
Not
paid.
yet.
I'm not getting paid the big bucks, so they know what they're doing. I know. Um, so even, I think that's what's good about any show, to discuss, what you liked, didn't like. And I think me and you tend to have very wildly different opinions on things. So that's one
That's
reason
true.
it's good for us to talk about like a big show or something. But I feel this time we're pretty similar, except like
Yeah.
episode 3 and 7 stuff. I have a different viewpoint on that, but for the most part, yeah, I would say one of the better uh, HBO. Well, one of the better shows I've watched in general recently. Um,
Yeah,
and
I agree. It's a really good show. And if I was just rating it on the show, it would be probably where you're at,
yeah,
7 or an 8. But I, it's just like the difference between the game and how I felt. It really brought it down for me. I actually think there's a lot of shows that I would rate it above, but I'd give those shows like a higher rating than this show. And it's which is weird to think about, but I think it's just that like compared to the game, this is
mm.
I can't get over that. I don't know why.
Well, I guess that concludes this episode. Thank you for listening. And as I mentioned before, you can check out John's solo channel where he talks about hot takes about various things. And I'll link all that on the YouTube. And we also have negative-hp.com, which is kind of my base of operations, and this channel, Negative HP channel. You can see behind me, if you're watching the video, I have a shitload of board games. So I'm going to be talking about board games more on this channel, well, my solo videos. So if you're into the YouTube stuff, you can check out John or check out me, and you can check us out together here on the podcast. And if you're just listening to audio, thanks for listening. And until next time, see ya,
Bye.
everyone. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.
Already.